you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us a final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. Then it's time to turn your pods up, because we're live to tape from the mountains of West Virginia. It's time once again for Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
Live to tape from the mountains of West Virginia, it's another episode of Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me on this episode of Let's Find Out. Our guest is a cryptozoologist and field researcher in the UK doing the same things and is on the same mission as we are, trying to find the evidence and answers to the mysterious world of cryptids and the mysteries surrounding these creatures. Please welcome to Let's Find Out a new friend to our show, cryptozoologist Colin Keelty. Colin, my friend. Hey, aside from all the technical stuff we had to deal with before this show, thank you for taking the time to come on all the way from the UK to joining us here on Let's Find Out.
Diego, you are absolutely welcome, and thank you for inviting me.
No, sure. And I know we've been in contact for about a month trying to make this happen. And I know you have your own show that you're doing and your research, same thing with me. So I'm fascinated by the world of cryptids, and I'm also fascinated by some of the common cryptids that we have here in the United States and in the UK, mostly like Bigfoot or a version of Dogman and such. But I did find some interesting creatures there before I had you on. I kind of cheated a little bit, but there's been different sightings throughout the years in the UK. I mean, a few hundred years, but you have interesting names for some of the creatures in your area. I'm going to butcher a couple of these. So the black shook, the beast of...
Yeah, it's a dog, down south, The
beast
red
of...
glowing eyes.
Oh, okay, great. Let's talk about that, if you don't mind. The beast of Bottom Moor. This one is easy. The Bristol crocodile.
Well,
let's go. We don't know what that's about, but
they say that was a big hoax. But I'm obviously I've never looked into it, to be honest. But
I mean, look, at least in the United States, I mean, alligators and such are common in different states. But the only time you'll ever have a sighting of a crocodile or an alligator, if it's somebody flushes one down the toilet, it winds up somewhere in a... We don't know about. There was a movie in the 70s called Alligator that came out. I don't know if you ever seen that. Yeah, so something similar, but sorry about the tangent. So let's talk about what you've been doing, because you've been keeping yourself busy exploring the UK for these mysterious creatures. So where have you been going?
I've been all over Britain, to be honest, doing this. I've actually been on Bodmin Moor. I used to do a place called the Lake Districts. But Dolby Forest. I did that for a few years, but I basically keep it to local at the moment. I'm doing a place called Danes Dyke. It's just about 2 miles outside a seaside town called Bridlington on the east coast. There's a lot of all sorts are going on there. Sightings, ghost sightings, noises, paranormal. It's a real weird place, and even on the night it's weird. I've been down there a few times on the night, but I'll try and keep things local at the moment. But I am planning to get far afield after Christmas. Wait until the bad weather. I don't mind bad weather, but I'm going to wait until after Christmas, get everything over, and then start a lot more research and further afield next year. But it is an interesting place where I go at the moment. Not as good as you guys over there. I mean, you must have, 5 million acres of forest?
Yes, thankfully untouched. And I don't think in the history of this country where even some of these national forests where humans have stepped foot into them. So I'm 100% convinced that there is something in the forest here in the United States.
Yeah,
but
I am.
Whether they travel through a cave system or some sort of underground tunnel, there has to be something there. Interesting enough, mentioning that, and we kind of touched. You mentioned Dogman, and so did I. There's been at least here in the United States, a big increase in Dogman sightings. And it's one of those where it's quietly becoming more popular because the big thing, especially here in West Virginia where I'm at, is Bigfoot. You got the Bigfoot shows, you have the on television, other podcasts, but in your neck of the woods, also Dogman as well. Is that becoming a little more popular than it used to be? Because it's catching me by surprise. I don't know why there are more sightings now than before.
Well, I think the reason is because media. I mean, many years ago, it was a taboo. When I first started, I was 14 years old. Well, my first sighting when I was 14. I couldn't explain what it was. I just thought it was just another dog, but oversized. I ran home, told my father that I'd seen him. He wasn't sure what it was. So it just spanned from there. I didn't know it was for the shape of things to come. Years ago, I actually saw a program from the US on Bigfoot. And that's when I was hooked. I was just turning about 15 at the time. And I was just hooked. And I ran to the library the very next day, asked for a book on Bigfoot, and she just laughed. Absolutely laughed the place down. And I said, I've been serious. And she says, it's only make-believe. She says, go to the children's section and have a look for a book there. And I said, I was shocked. And it's been like that all. I mean, over the years, I've gone under stealth. I've sort of like gone backpacking to say I'm going backpacking. But I've been looking for these things. I've made all sorts of excuses up. Because years ago, it was total taboo, really. If you mentioned it, everybody would laugh the place down. Now, it's just exploded. So, I mean, the media's exploded, especially over here. So, there's more and more stories coming in from past and present. People are feeling more confident to talk about these things. So that's why I think there's an explosion, especially in the UK and possibly in the US because of the media situation.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have thought, let me take that back, because the more I do this show, the more I'm learning, especially from the people who do the field research like you do. I was surprised that the similarities between the cryptids in your country and mine. And with that being said, do you think that they were brought over from your area to ours? Or is it just something that when the continents split and these creatures, I guess I'll say Earth selected? It just,
yeah.
Lack of better words, because eventually, if it comes from one area, eventually it all got split up. How do they travel through different parts of the world?
I don't know. I do think that theory where when the Earth, all our plates divided, and they all went their separate ways. Like you've got, I mean, Australia's got the Yowie, Asia's got the wild man, etc., etc. So yeah, and it's all involved things involved around the environment and what food source there is, how much space they have, etc. I mean, you know yourself, it's evolution. So yeah, I do. How they move around, I'm not sure. I believe these things are real. I'd like to think these things are real. I've seen 2 sightings, and as far as I'm concerned, they was real. How they move around, are they extraterrestrial? Are they from another dimension? Do they use tunnels? I've got some evidence of using green belts. We have green belts in the UK where it's basically for wildlife. There's a green belt joining an industrial site to another industrial site. They'll just have some greenery and patch your land untouched. I've had several reports from factory workers seeing these things moving through these green belts. But how they move around. But you mentioned the tunnel system earlier. I've had some reports from people. There's some old, not far from me, there's some old RAF tunnels, and they reckon they go for miles. Are they using these? I don't know. I know they use waterways around here, canals. They've seen many times. Power lines. They seem to follow power lines as well. That's another strange one as well. Why? I don't know if it's the magnetic earth and the power. It's how they move around. I'm not sure. But yeah, I do think they've split with the continents.
And one of those things to where you touched on this earlier, because with evolution and depending on food source as well, it will also determine the size of these beasts, correct?
Yeah. I do think it is that, even though I deal with a lot of researchers, some fantastic researchers, and in the US and the UK. In the UK, I have had several reports of these things being large. My second sighting, I call it Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because my first sighting was like, it was so puny, so skinny, but it was on two legs, and I just couldn't explain it. My man said at the time was not on a Dogman. Now I wasn't sure about Dogman at the time, and then that was in 1990. But my second one in September 2015, when I saw it, I call it the Arnold Schwarzenegger because it was just muscle, abs, the lot. It was just huge. So why was that skinny and why was that large? I don't know. But yeah, I do think they go with the environment. But why some gets? I've had other researchers say over here they've seen some, I reckon 8 foot plus. Why are that big over here? Where's the food source? I know that we have lots of deer over here and things like that. We have a lot of mutilations. I'm sure you do in the US. The connection. I mean, I am saying this is happening, but we have a lot of people going missing here, and you doing 411 and stuff like that. I'm not sure they are taking people. I think 1 or 2 are, but I don't want to panic anybody. But firstly, I don't know what the food source is really. It's got to be deer in the UK mainly. There you have all sorts of things.
Yeah, I would assume they would have been a carnivore. But let me ask you, because you're talking about the Arnold. I'm going to call it Arnold. Where when you saw the creature, did it have a smell to it? Did it make any noise?
The first one I saw, no. It's a long story. People who follow me, I'm sure they get sick of hearing it. I was trying to get to. I lived at Hull at the time. I was married. I'm divorced now. I'm single. I was married at the time, but we only had one car, and I had to get from Hull, big town city in where I lived at the time, to a small village called Hornsea on the seafront on the east coast of Britain. I worked there. I worked in Hornsea. It was 20 miles away. I was used to backpacking because obviously I kept going out all the time with backpacks, and 20 miles was nothing to me, to be honest. I was in my sort of like early 20s, and as I was heading up there, it was a full moon. I didn't have a torch with me. I had some gear in a backpack, and I was walking to a friend's house because they was going to put me up. And like I say, I had this thing coming. I just come onto this lane, heading up to a little village before Hornsea, and I heard something coming down this hedgerow. I couldn't see through the hedgerow because it was that thick, even though the full moon was actually that bright. It was just like daylight, which I was glad of because I didn't have a torch. And I was walking up, and it was walking alongside of me, and I kept thinking, well, it must be a cow. And you could just see under the edge. And I kept thinking, no, that's not cow hoofs. And I thought, no, is it a deer? No, it's not a deer. And I thought, hold on, I can only see back legs. I thought, this is strange. I thought, well, I saw a gate hole coming up, and I thought, well, I'll find out in a minute what it is. And just as I was approaching this gate hole, this car, I could hear it coming behind me, so I stopped, got into the side of the edge on the grass, and the car come shooting by, brake lights come on, reverse lights come on, then he come back, and it was my mate that I was going to his house. He says he thought he'd better come looking for me to just make sure I was all right. Like, and so as I got in the car and I looked across, I could see this thing in this gate hole just stood up, just looking. So I only saw it for say 3-4 seconds, but it looked so puny and thin, like it was starving. Anyway, he shot off because he was a bit of a madhead. And I says, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, look. He says, what? I said, there's a dog stood up. And he just burst out laughing. And I said, no. And I rounded on him like that. I said, no. Anyway, time we started sort of like arguing about the toss. Was it stood up? No, we got to the place where I wanted to be, there to his house. Then he said, should we turn round? I said, oh, no, it's too late now. Too late. I said, forget it. But it worried me for years, and I had really nightmares about that first sighting. I kept thinking this thing had jumped over, in my dreams, I kept thinking this thing had jumped over and ripped me to bits, but it was so puny when I saw it. But like I say, my second one was so big, the difference. But no, there was no smell there, but on my second sighting, the smell was putrid. Absolutely Excuse me. That's what I think. It was a Dogman. I didn't get fully face view of its face. I've spoke to people in the US and obviously in the UK, and everybody thinks it could be a Bigfoot. The only reason I think it's a Dogman is one, is of the smell. Two, when I was walking up to where the encounter happened, something small, I'd say Alsatian size, Labrador size, got up and ran. I just saw it at the corner of my eye. Then something big got up and ran. So I thought it was a deer, and it's full. So I bobbed down, not to scare him anymore, because I didn't want to, I didn't want him parting from its foal like. So I stopped in this long grass when I was walking through, and I stopped there for a couple of minutes, slowly raised up, and I couldn't say anything. And that's when I started walking up, and this is when I started getting the smell. And then I heard this thing walking down this edge through the brush. I thought it was some well, I can't really say what woods I was in. It's some private woods. I got permission. I've actually spoke to them after the incident, the encounter, and they says, please don't mention where you was. So I says, okay. So I got permission. Anyway, the farmer who gave me permission told me, he says, just be careful sometimes. There's some guys that manage the woods that cut down the trees, edges, and just keep it tidy and now and again. So if you hear anybody in the woods, it's bound to be them. Like, so I thought it was some guy. So I kept shouting out as I'm walking down this edge that my name's Colin Keelty. I've got permission to be here. And there was no reply, and I shouted it several times. And all I could hear was big thuds. And I thought, what the heck? And with that, we just got to the end of this row, this bush, and it just come into view, and it stopped. And I had a camera and everything, and I just literally pooed. I just had to get out of there. The fear factor was just... But on the night, I was just kicking myself. Why didn't I take a picture? Why didn't I do this? It's easy to say that, but at the time, I just knew I had to get out of there. But yeah. That stunk. Really did putrid.
What time of the day was that in? Unless I missed it earlier when you said it.
You said that first one was about 8:30 at night. About 7, somewhere around about 8:30, 8 o'clock. That second one, it was about 8:30 in the morning. It's daylight. I usually got into these woods. I've been doing these woods for about a month after I got permission. I kept going in there late in the night, early hours of morning. And I was late that morning. I was planning to get up. It was a Sunday. I'd been at work on the Saturday. We don't work many Saturdays, but I remember we had to that Saturday, so I was up late on the Sunday, and I've got my gear back on and rushed out there, and that's when it happened. But yeah, that was strange in the daytime. The Osborne effect as well. As I was walking down there, I mean, you could hear all the birds and the cows, and the field next door was full of cows, like. And just as I was going through the long grass, everything just went deadly silent, which they call it the Osborne effect, don't they? So that was another strange part. The quietness. You could hear a pin drop, not a sound.
Wow, that sounds doesn't sound, but it would be terrifying. When you went back into the woods, were you able to see any tracks on the dirt?
I never went back.
You did not go back at all.
I've never been back since.
I don't blame.
Like I spoke to the owner. They says, please don't mention it to anybody. Not that he knew anything, but I think they didn't want any ridicule because attached to these woods there's a famous house, and he owns that, so I didn't. And I've never been back, to be honest. After that, I kept planning to go back, but never did. And now it's changed hands. Actually, the farmer's actually sold the house and all its land. I know who he sold it to, but I know they're not approachable. So, but yeah, I've never been back. I've been back to the other first sighting, but it's all changed and never seen anything, no prints.
So when you go out and explore these locations and you write down the information, what do you do with that information? Are you doing a blog, or are you...
Sorry, yeah, some of it, yeah, I do actually put out there. I put it on Facebook. I've been here and I found this print, and I've had this story, and I'll laminate on it. And usually I'll make a file and a hard copy, and I put it in one of my files. I don't know if you can see them from here, but I've got about 8 files down there full of stories. over the years that have been submitted. I keep saying I'm writing a book. I've done about 3 pages. It's getting what's up here and what's in there into a book form, and I'm just terrible at it. But one day, it will be all out there.
Well, as I look, you have a ton of files. I mean, I would think you have enough information to at least release your first book. And aside from the Dogman sightings, for the listeners of Let's Find Out, and for me, what are the more popular cryptids in the UK? Because I know we said Dogman, a version of Bigfoot. What else is going out there in the woods?
There's a lot of things going on in the woods. It's been reported all sorts of things from the Owl Man. I know you have the Mothman. We have the Owl Man down south, Cornwall. I don't know. There's all sorts. There's dinosaurs being reported. Like you say, black shuck, black dogs. It's mainly Bigfoot sightings that we seem to get, and Dogman sightings. I don't like the word Dogman. Prefer wolf people, but that's about it. There's strange creatures being reported all the time, especially paranormal. That's been reported a lot. But yeah, cryptid side. There's all sorts, like you say, the crocodiles being reported. Like I said, there's a dinosaur supposed to be roaming around. I don't know. Pick a subject and then we can talk about it. There's that many being reported in the English countryside. What's myth and what's true, I don't know.
What are the more current reports, though? Because I know, at least you and I, we're online all the time. I'm sure we're reading the books, we're listening to the podcast, and it seems that there's a increase of these sightings. We talked about that in the UK, here in the United States. But what are the more, I want to say, latest news? Is there anything that's been current? Because at least here, right now, the big thing is UFOs.
Yeah, there's UFOs in. We get a lot in the UK. I certainly believe they're under the sea. There's a big researcher not far from me, and he's written books. But yeah, I've had quite a few UFO stories submitted to me. I've just had a Dogman report from down at Cornwall, Exeter, with it's like national, bit like a park, but quite big. It's all open ground. All I can say, this report, I'm just typing up actually at the moment. The other day, I still haven't finished it. But basically, this happened on the 22nd of August this year. Spanned over 3 nights. The first night, it was warm. It's the 22nd of August. It's warm. They had the bedroom window open. They're upstairs. They're in a bungalow, but as an upstairs. They kept hearing this howling noise. They woke them both up. The second night, they didn't hear anything. Well, they don't think they've heard anything. They didn't get woken up. Third night, woke up again. He did. He woke his wife up. Then it happened again, sort of like the third night, the fourth night, sorry. And she got woken her husband up. So it sounded like it was almost outside the window. So he goes downstairs. They have the garage attached to the house. He goes in the garage, gets his fishing light because he's a keen fisherman. Goes out, shines his torch. There it is. Just walks straight past his. They have a small cottage in the middle of nowhere. It's a long, drawn-out story why they have this cottage. And they only have a small garden with a small white picket fence. And the lane ends about another half a mile past their house. It's a dead-end lane off a main road. And he says it just come walking past their house from left to right. He just shone his light. His jaw dropped. He wasn't sure what the heck he was looking at. There it was, stood on 2 legs, claws, teeth. Walked past his house. Just looked at him as like to say evening. Never even sort of like made any attempt to come anywhere near him and walked past. And he says it just went up the road. He says he just absolutely babbed himself, ran in the house, locked the door, ran upstairs. That's a recent. This is this year. That's the only one I've had this year, to be honest, apart from a UFO report. That's about it, really. I've had a few ghost reports this year, but nothing seems to be peaking at the moment. And it usually does this time of year. I don't know. Do you have certain times of the year in the US?
It seems that it's been pretty much year round. It's interesting, really. I think that it may die down a little bit in the wintertime, but I know because there's less people out in the woods at that time. unless you're, I reckon if you're a hunter. So I don't think that there'll be reports of any Bigfoot or Dogman now come around like in the autumn time, spring or summer. You'll probably hear a lot more of those. But let me touch on something because now with Dogman, the way it looks, I would throw this out there that maybe hundreds of years ago that there might have been several Dogman sightings in Europe, but back then they were called werewolves or may have been mistaken for a werewolf, right?
Yeah.
So it may not be more under the supernatural category, but more of a actual animal that just so happens to be able to not only walk on its two legs, but also on four.
Yes, I've had reports of this. I've also had reports of shapeshifters. So, I mean, where does it stop? Do we have certain categories, which I think we do of Dogman? I think we have the type that stays in that shape all the time. I think we have people that can change into them. I've seemed to have had some evidence years ago. I won't go into too many details. But yeah, there seems to be all sorts of shapes and sizes. And yeah, you could be sort of like right there. It's
a little bit of something for everybody because it depends.
Well,
I actually, it might depend on how you're brought up in your belief system. Could it be a shapeshifter? Is it supernatural? If you're not really into that type of belief, well, it just might just be another animal that hasn't been categorized yet. So it could be left up to interpretation.
You could be right there. What I have done in my studies and in all my cases, when I interview somebody, I try and find what is happening in their background, i.e., are they mentally stable? Have they ever had a bereavement or they're going through some type of stress? It seems to indicate, and I would definitely say about 80%, maybe a bit more, of the cases that I've interviewed have all gone through some type of stress when they've seen these said creatures. Now, what the connection is, I don't know. I ask people what the weather was like. Obviously I go over the time of day. I've tried and find every detail I can about the encounter. I try and build a pattern. I mean, I don't appreciate you can't see it, but I have a map of Britain, and I've got red pens in for Dogmen, black for Bigfoots, blah, blah, blah. And I try and work a pattern out. There is no pattern on the sightings, but I've never got other people's sightings. There might be a pattern. But the pattern that I have found, people are going through a lot of stress. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
I interviewed this guy called Tony years ago, and I went to see him. He'd seen something one night, and this is the first time I've ever heard anybody call it this. But he says, a Great Dane, this dog, Great Dane, he says, upright, walked past my car. Now, what had happened? His dad had just died of cancer. And he smoked, and his mother said, please stop smoking, blah, blah, obviously. And so he promised his mother to stop smoking, but he couldn't stop smoking because of the stress. So he kept having a quiet fag on the way home, just before I got home, after work. It was a rollie, a guy who smoked rolls. So I used to go into this, there used to be a golf course on the way home, and they had a little car park away from the big main car park. So he used to pull in there, roll a cig. Anyway, this particular night, he got in, just starting to get dust, just starting to get dark. You could still see, but not. And he parks up, gets his tobacco tin out, starts rolling a cig, and he sees a shadow. So he just looks up and he says, my jaw just dropped, and he just followed it, and he thought, somebody's playing a prank here. So he's looking around for kids, and he thought, what the? Anyway, as he cig, and then he has a load of polo mints and aftershave and to get rid of the smell. Goes home, tells his family, they all burst out laughing. So he wasn't happy about that, but goes to work, tells all his mates, they all burst out laughing. Anyway, it was months later, somebody put him on to me, and so I went to see the guy, and I asked him everything, and he was telling me about he'd lost his father and that. And it was only a few weeks after he'd lost his father, and he was so stressed. So I thought, wow. Anyway, after the interview, it was a fantastic interview, and he told me a description, but it was like a Great Dane, but it must have been about 5.5, 6 foot. Stood up. And after I finished the interview, he come across me and grabbed me. He just hugged me, and he said, thank you. I said, what for? He says, you can't believe how much I wanted to get that out. And I can't. get it out, and you've just released it. He says, thank you. He couldn't stop thanking me. And I've come across that a lot, especially when people are going through a lot of stress and they see these things. And it's another form of release. I think we're giving a bit of a service, to be honest. And I have come across it a lot. Like I say, there's other cases where people thank me. Oh, thank you for listening to me. Nobody would believe me. But yeah, he was going through he'd lost his father. Another case that was going through a divorce. And this thing chased his car. He saw it. There's a road and it's got a bend in it, a bit of a left-hand bend, so it's a bit of a blind bend. And he's coming from Hull at the time to a village called Leven. And it's a country road. And he comes around this certain bend on the left, and his headlights catch these eyes real low down. And he thinks, oh, there's a fox. There's a fox in the middle of the road. So he slows down. Anyway, the eyes come up a bit higher, then a bit higher, then a bit higher. And he thought, what the? Then he gets a glimpse of this thing because it steps out into the road. And he says there it was. And he swerved because it stepped out that much. He had to swerve. And he had his ex-wife now, but he had his wife in there and his newborn son. So he was panicking. And next minute he looks in his mirror and it's gone. And next minute it's at the side of his car, running parallel with his car. And now this guy, I would say he was 5'7", 5'8", and he had, you do the maths, he had a Renault Laguna, and he says its eyes was level with his, running, and it just looked at him as it was running along. And he says, I felt like it reached into my soul and grabbed it. So he started to speed up. He didn't want to speed up because he had his son and his wife. But he's trying to speed up, and he got to about 50 miles an hour, and it just stopped and backed off. But he looked in his mirror, and he says you could see it just looking at him. Anyway, when he got to this village, this Leven, where he lives in Leven, like I say, luckily he parked his car right up to his door. But he says I was bricking it, just trying to get my wife and my newborn son into the house. And again, they was going through a divorce. I could do you other cases, but they've all gone through stress, and they've all seen this said creature. So why? I've got another one here as well. He's an autistic kid, and these things. They was out with his family. It was late-ish on. It was dark. They was gone on camping, wild camping, and again, these things cottoned onto him. They kept hearing noises. They get up in the night, shine the torch, and there's two of them, and they tried to segregate all of them. But they tried to aim for the autistic kid. You could see it, they said. They was trying to get him to come away. Why? Why do they pick on people like this? What is it? And if anyone's got the answer, let me know. But it always seems like somebody's got some type of either mental issue or they're going through a divorce or a death. Seems to trigger a reaction.
I think there has to be some sort of connection there, whether it's supernatural or whether it's something that our energies maybe taps into the Dogman.
Yeah,
it could be, negative energy, any kind of energy like that. So I know that there's a lot of reporting of these things, but they're normally not reported in the big cities, right? Is there anything in the big cities?
There's been some, especially down the canal systems, like in York, Manchester, places like they have all the canals. It seems to follow the canals. I've had a few reports, people seeing these things, whatever they're not sure what they're seeing. But they all seem to follow out the canals, like I say, power lines. We've got a big case, which I don't like the name. They call it the Old Stinker in Hull. And there's what they call Barmson Drain running from the River Hull, from the main sea, splits into thousands of different little rivers across the UK, down the East Coast. And they've had a lot of sightings. I've actually interviewed two people that's seen this thing. They call it the Old Stinker, but the Old Stinker actually originated from Flixton near Scarborough. I think it was the 1500s, and they used to call it the Old Stinker because they knew this creature was about because they could smell sulphur, real pewter sulphur.
Awful.
So that's why they nicknamed it the Old Stinker, and now the Hull's taken on this name. I know it's been going on for years in Hull. I did quite a few well, I did almost a year going into Hull late on a night, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, going down the bankside there where the canal is and that. I've never seen anything, never heard anything, but I have interviewed people that has. I can give you one example. 2 young ladies been to a nightclub and they was going home, and again, this had just gone 1 o'clock, and they was passing the canal. There was a street light, and one of them says, whoa, who's that stood over there, the street light? Oh, I don't know, he's big though. And they got a bit closer and thought, oh my, and they skittled out of there quickly. It didn't follow home, it just stood there. It just stood next to the street light, stood up. Like anybody else would, just whistling away, maybe, I don't know. But it just stood there, they said. Didn't make any reactions to them or anything. But it's definitely alive. It wasn't a mannequin or somebody in a... They said they want somebody in a suit, but I don't know.
No, I'm sorry, if you could get past the smell. I mean, I would just run just for that.
I've asked them, but they can't remember. They was intoxicated, so you don't...
Oh, yeah, it's that kind of party.
But they swear, they saw it. Well, this one girl says she swears I saw something that I can't explain. So I don't know. It's sighting all over the UK, and it mainly is Bigfoot and Dogman that are seen.
Well, there's enough of that action to go by anyway, so to keep you busy. And so when you when you receive this report, and I know a lot of the folks that contact you, they want to remain anonymous, and I can understand why. How do they reach you? Do they just reach you directly through email, or are you getting referrals from other researchers?
I'll get referrals from other people. A lot of people seem to go a lot of places now. I've been doing it so many years, and people, this is I don't know why this is. I've never lived there, but people say, oh, you want to speak to Cole from Hornsey. Hornsey is a little village. I've never lived in Hornsey. Why they keep connecting me up to Hornsey, I don't know. But anyway, I'm out there. I post flyers, put adverts in papers. Obviously, I'm on Facebook. I'm on all the social media sites, how to contact me. And sometimes it goes from word to mouth. And sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. I went to look for some tracks one time. This gentleman's dead now, unfortunately. I did want to totally interview him and get it on tape. I went to look for some tracks. I just had a report from a place called Cars. It's an old railway track. It's been abandoned for years. And this car driver on the main road was coming to work one morning, and he says something huge ran from in his car, ran across the road in front of his car. Luckily, he told the guy at work, he says, I think I know somebody who might be interested. And this is how I got the story. So it happened 2 days prior. So I went there just before it got dark, and I'm looking for these prints, and I see this guy walking up with a dog. So he goes, what are you looking for? So I said, oh, prints. What type of prints? So I didn't know what to tell him, really. So I said, oh, big cat prints. Oh, I've seen it round here. I said, well, somebody else. Then after a bit of talking to him, I said, well, I'm actually looking for Dogman prints. He goes, what's a Dogman? I told him. He went really quiet, and he goes, this guy's in his 80s. He goes, oh my God. He says, are these things real? I says, well, I think they are. He says, I've got a story for you. He told me he used to live in this village down in Cornwall. And when he was 22, it was in the August time, and they'd just done the harvest, and they was having a big festival. He lived miles away. He asked his dad if he could borrow his car, and he picked his mate up, and we were going to this festival, and all they wanted was beer and girls. That's all you want in it, really, in your 20s. And they was driving down this country lane, and they come to this bend, and there was this thing, he says, stood in the middle of the road. I hit my brakes. It says it just stood there. It says like a giant wolf. Stood on 2 legs. Me and my mate was just looking at each other. He looked at us, then he says he cleared the road onto this hedge, and he jumped over this edge into this field, and he says, my mate got out, and I'm shouting him, get back in the car. And he says he looked up on the edge, and he could see it running on 2 legs across the field, then it went on all 4s and gone. And he says, I've kept that to myself. We both kept that to myself. We went into this fair, he says. We never spoke to anybody. We just hit the beer tent. We never even looked for girls. We didn't even bother. We went home, and we made a pledge never to tell anybody in my life. And he said, you're the first person. I didn't even tell my wife, he said. I got his details. Anyway, a few weeks later, I'd found out he'd been really ill and he passed away, which was unfortunate. But anyway. So, yeah, sometimes it's by chance. Sometimes it's by people that's, you know the score yourself, really. How to contact people and get in touch.
No, it's interesting because when people at where I work, because I keep I'm going to call my side projects to myself. I don't tell many people at work what I do because then it's going to be, they can laugh at me. I don't care. I'm a grown man. You'll be surprised that once they found out that I do a podcast covering all these subjects, all the low-key confessions you'll get when they pull you inside of the hallway. Hey, when I was a kid, I saw a ghost. Or, I saw it. That those kind of things do tend to happen, and then you start getting all these stories, and they're amazing stories. Sometimes I feel really bad for them because they look like they're nervous telling you, and sometimes it's just something they just have to get out because nobody will believe them.
That's right, yeah. No, it's the same thing, isn't it? I mean, I've told everybody knows. I'll give you an example. I didn't know I was this bad, to be honest, but I just bumped into a guy I used to work with at a different firm 20 years ago. And this was about 3-4 months ago. And I was parked in a lay-by. I drive a truck now. I was parked in a lay-by having my break. And I see this car go by next to its brake lights come on, and it reversed back into the lay-by. I thought, I'll say this guy won't like. And he gets out and he's looking, Cole, blooming heck, Cole. And then I hadn't seen this guy for 20 years, and we got chatting how you are, blah, 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 as you do. Anyway, he says, look, I better go. And I says, look, keep in touch. And I give him one of my cards. I always carry cards around with me. I've got them in my wallet. I've got them everywhere. I've got them in my car, leaving at work. And if I meet anybody, this is how you contact me. So I give him one of my cards and he goes, blooming heck, are you still into this? This is all you used to talk about, I said, no, I didn't. He says, you did. We couldn't shut you up half the time. And I thought, no, have I been really that bad? But yeah, it's surprising how many people you tell and over the years and they get to know, and that gets to another person, that gets to another person. But everybody at work knows. My boss doesn't believe in it, but he gives me, if I've got a project on and I'll say I need to leave early Friday, any possible, what you doing, blah, blah, and I'll tell him, yeah, go on then. He'll try and support me, but he keeps telling me, I don't believe in it, he says. Well, that's the way it is, but he does hand my details out. He's handed it out to quite a few customers that have come in, and he's got talking to them, and, we live in the countryside, and he said, we've got a guy, and he gives them one of my cards. So that's quite good. But yeah, if anybody wants to contact me, I'm sure, Colin Keelty will find me out there. I can give you some details over here. Or Diego can put up on your website when you do this podcast, whatever you want to do.
Of course. And before we go, I know that you're a man of many talents. Not only you're a cryptozoologist, but you also have other things that you do as well. So what other side projects are you doing?
Yeah, I do podcasts. Like I say, I've took a lot of stuff off there. I'm trying to do my stories into videos. I'm just starting to do it. I'm just going down to a place. Well, I was hoping to get down last weekend, but it's just chucking it down with rain. We've had torrential rain here for the last 3 weeks. I was trying to get down to a certain location. I'll cut a long story short, but I've had several. This location, just outside of Hull, there's about 3-4 houses and maybe 2 farms. The reports from this area, and I've been up there on a night several times, and I've heard nothing. But I've had 3 different poachers come forward, one with a fantastic story. A woman driving a car, she was using it as a cut through from a town called Beverley, and she lived in a place called Scaler, and it does branch off, and she was using it as a quick cut through one night. And I was just driving home. She just picked her son up from a dentist because she had to go to the dentist. Usually he gets the school bus home. And it's her son said, stop! And there's something at the side of the road. They couldn't make out what it was, but it says it wasn't a deer. And it just disappeared into the blackness and gone. And that shook her up. I got that through another friend. She mentioned it too. Like I say, I've got a fantastic story I'm going to do from mid-80s. This poacher. He'd been poaching for several years down in that area. He did really well for pheasants, rabbits, and the local butcher used to buy him off him. This is how he made his money. One week, he was out, and he says it was about 1 o'clock, and he just heard this almighty scream. Never saw anything. Scream. He thought, what the? He's never heard anything like it. So anyway, he thinks, oh, I'm going home. He gets home. Anyway, the following week, he does the next Saturday. He says it's about 1:30. And he's just walking down this field, and he sees this figure, and he thinks, oh my goodness, it's the farmer. So he runs to this edge, and he knows this edge has got a deep dike, and it's dry. There's no water in it. He gets into this dike, and he sees this thing coming up. You could just see it in the moonlight, just coming up the edge. And he thinks, oh, man, I hope he don't see me. I hope he don't see me. Anyway, this thing gets to this where he is, and there's a huge tree, and he says it just grabs this tree, and it flings this tree back and forth, back and forth. It starts screaming, this scream that he's heard. Just screaming. The next minute, it just walks off. He was petrified. Now, he says this tree was like that. A human couldn't sway it like that. He says, I don't, heck it was. He says, but I got out of there. He says, I've never been in that area since. But yeah, I've had several poachers in that area say similar things. So that's one of them I'm going to do. That's one of my first ones I'm going to try and document and get a video out there of it. But yeah, things are progressing on slowly. I used to do a lot of stuff, but I've put that to one side now. But yeah, I'm always open for stories. Any stories, any from the UK, if anybody's listening, even from the US. Some of your stories over there are absolutely amazing.
And absolutely, you know, you have so much information to share, so much content to share with the world. When we get off the show in the post interview, I'm going to try to convince you to write this book, because I'm telling you, brother, it has to happen. I tell you,
Diego, what's up there, what I can do there is absolutely terrible. I'm terrible at writing and putting sentences together. I think that's what's stopping me. But I know there's somebody says use Grammarly, which I started to use Grammarly now on Facebook and that. So I might start to do it like so.
All right. Well, I'm going to buy that first copy. And so
you won't buy it. I'll send you it for free.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much for that. Now, before we go, and I know you touched on it a little while ago, for the listeners of Let's Find Out, where can they find out more about your work? And if they want to share a story with you, I know you talk about the social media. So how can I get
website?
Yeah.
I haven't updated it for a long while, but it really does need updating. I'm terrible at that. But yeah, all right, if you go to colinkeelty.com, I'm on there. That tells you basically about a bit of my life and how I started when I was 14 years old, how I got into all this, and I've had encounters ever since. Facebook, Colin Keelty, you can contact me on there, or you can contact me at encounters@mail.com. There's another way. Contact me or contact Diego or any researcher in the UK, and they'll say, I know, Col. We'll pass it straight on.
Sure, if they contact me, I'll send them your way, my friend. No problem at all. Sure, it has been a pleasure getting to know you, and thank you for reaching out and staying in contact with me all these weeks. And I look forward to having you back sometime next year, because I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot more stories to share.
Oh, yes, I hope so. Yeah, that'd be an honor. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. This has been an excellent episode of Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, as well as our YouTube channel, and we're also on Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Thank you for listening to Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Pocket Casts, and on Anchor. For more information about Let's Find Out with co-host Diego, please visit us on Facebook.com/co-host Diego, on Twitter at co-host_Diego, and on Instagram as co-host Diego. Copyright co-host Diego. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.